On today's podcast, we're talking about the aspect of resting and recharging that arrives when we allow our mindset to break free from the normal tendencies of our normal routines. Temporarily allowing ourselves to break tendencies can allow us to discover newness, creativity, and a different kind of rest. Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hey everybody, it's Jason and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast, welcome in. So glad you're here. So glad you're taking time to step back, to think about the temperature you're trying to set in your life and your work and how to breathe good oxygen into that to keep that going. So welcome in. Thanks to everybody who's been a part of this podcast from the very beginning. Glad this continues to add value to your life and work. And for anybody that's new to the podcast, welcome. So glad you're here. Hope you'll go back and listen to past episodes. We have over 180 episodes. Great interviews, great micropods about all kinds of different topics that you can dive into. And I hope that you will do that because it hopefully will add value and make a good contribution to your life and work. My hope with this podcast and my commitment to you is that every time I record one, my hope is that it's allowing some time and space for you to step back, to think about your life, to think about your work, and to come out even more intentional for the next whatever it is on your list or whatever coming next in your life and your work. So if you will do me a favor before we dive into today's episode, if you will rank the podcast 5 stars, of course, on whatever platform you're using. If you'll leave an authentic review in your own voice, your own words, those are ways in which that the podcast, it helps to share and reach more people. And so anytime you share it with colleagues or team members or email it out to friends or whatever a topic on social media that resonates with you, those are the ways in which this spreads. And I appreciate everybody who does so, because that's the point. We want to amplify these messages further into the world. So on these, the last couple of pod episodes and then the next couple, we're in the midst of a series that are shorter by design and purposeful content due to this time of year and the encouragement to myself and to you to find and carve out time to step back, to recharge, to allow yourself some time to rest. Not just so you can, just quote unquote take time off to be a slacker. That's not what this is about at all. Again, hopefully you do take time to just vacation, step back, relax, rest, all of that. But the purpose of these is to talk about the role that plays in helping you be at your best when your best is needed. And so the impetus for this series it comes from my yearly commitment. I try to do a great job throughout the year of taking good time off to rest and recharge when I need to throughout a normal calendar year. But I also carve out really intentional time beyond just vacation each, mid-year. And the purpose of the time is to do just that, to allow myself to recharge, to study new things that I want to think about or learn, to rest, allow some time for my mind and heart to rest, and allow for kind of new growth to emerge. And I've watched the way that this practice of recharging has helped me to not get complacent, to not, to not just repeat the same patterns, but to discover new ideas, to rest my body and my mind and reconnect to the most important, people in my life, let alone the most important things that I want to give my attention to. So every year, the practice of stepping back helps me get better at everything else that I do and ultimately who I hope to be in the world. So Some people need and want some strategies for how they spend their time off to rest or recover and recharge, and that's exactly what this series around these topics is meant to do. So, on today's podcast, we're talking about the aspect of resting and recharging that arrives when we allow our mindset to break free from the normal tendencies of our normal routines. Temporarily allowing ourselves to break tendencies can allow us to discover newness, creativity, and a different kind of rest. But before we dive into today's topic, let's pause, take a quick break, and we'll be right back. If you haven't done so already, we hope you'll visit Amazon or Amplify or jasonvbarger.com to check out Breathing Oxygen, my new book that is all about breathing good oxygen into ourselves and mindsets that fuel ourselves and the teams and the organizations around us. Positive, healthy thinking is as essential to great leadership and building a winning culture as the air we breathe. Leading yourself and a team of people has never been more complicated than it is today. As a leader, every move you make is either breathing life into your organization or slowly killing it. The atmosphere can easily turn toxic with negativity, blame, and doubt poisoning the culture. Just like every being on the planet needs good air to breathe, every organization needs leadership that breathes life into its people to sustain the energy required to complete its mission. Breathing Oxygen focuses on 6 key leadership mindsets that breathe life into any team: clarity, inclusivity, mental agility, grit, rest, and ownership. Join us, read, and share Breathing Oxygen.
Available now from Amplify Books on Amazon and jasonvbarger.com.
Thanks for joining me again on this quick micropod series on the ethic of recharging, resting, so that we can be at our best when our best is required. Again, these are quicker podcasts by design to give you quick doses of encouragement to you and to me to practice this art of slowing down that will help us be better and more effective down the road in whatever endeavor you are searching in your life and your work. Years ago, when I wrote my second book called Remember, which is about renewing our memberships, relationships, focus in a distracting world, I cited the study from the Harvard Business Review about the number of times in an average day that we as humans are distracted, switching from task to task. Again, I'm just bringing this up to reframe and refresh this idea for those of us that have been listening to this series. Again, 300 to 500 times in an average day, the study showed that we are distracted, jumping from thing to thing, and that somehow we've equated busyness to effectiveness. And as we buy into this myth of always moving, always doing something, it's leading to about a 30% productivity rate. And so one of the main findings in the study was that the most effective people and teams actually created time to slow down in order to speed up. They took time to slow down and to rest even and get intentional about their next actions, what needs to get their focus. And then the result was they were more effective coming out of these periods of slowing down. And so we are not at our most effective selves when we, grind at all hours of every day and never stop and never rest. That isn't actually a design that is sustainable and also isn't tied to elite performance. In my most recent book, Breathing Oxygen, again, I have a whole chapter that's focused on this mindset around rest and reassociation with this term rest. And it comes right after, by the way, the chapter that is about grit, which, again, accomplishing anything in the world today of significance is going to require grit and hard work and moving through challenges and obstacles. So absolutely, that is required. But sometimes we miss the next piece, which is resting and recharging and the role that plays in elite performance. And so studies on elite performance show that the person that has the mentality of, oh, I'm just going to outwork the competition, or it's just about who grinds the hardest, and I never come up from air, and I can't possibly take time off, actually isn't the person that is tied to elite performance. That mindset does not actually show up in the studies. I did a whole podcast again about that idea and also a whole chapter in the book about that. So elite performance is not about never coming up for air, but is about learning how to breathe more efficiently so that we can navigate our way through the challenges and be at our best when our best is needed. And so how we rest, how we recharge, how we vision is as important to our elite performance as the hard work we, of course, have to put in. But statistics tell us that Americans alone leave about 768 million days of vacation unused each year on the table. We don't take the time, and we somehow buy into this myth that I can't do it, or it won't help me, that I just need to keep working harder if I want to achieve what I want to achieve. And the reality is we have an opportunity to better understand how rest actually leads to better performance. So today we're building on the themes. Again, a couple episodes again, I framed up this entire series on the episode about slowing down in order to speed up. And last episode I talked about the rest, the aspect of rest, of seeking joy and things I do in my time off intentionally to kind of seek joy in new ways, and how that brings an energy to me when I return to the work or to the mission of whatever I'm doing next. And today we're going to talk about an aspect of rest for me that is about breaking tendencies. And so when I carve out time each year to rest and recharge, for some study leave, to slow down in order to speed up, one of the intentional practices I do is try to be very intentional about breaking my own tendencies. And so let me explain what I mean by that. I purposely challenge myself to get out of some of my normal routines in order to experience newness and allow for creative and new experiences to emerge. And so now, for clarity's sake, I want to establish that I know that routines and habits and structures are powerful, and for many, extremely helpful. And for some people who are highly structured and disciplined people, that those kind of structures and habits and routines are necessary to how they move throughout the world. So I know how powerful those can become. And some really need those guardrails more than others, and some do better by that kind of routine. And if you remember, also, I want to connect the dots for this topic to past episodes that I did about biorhythm, or again, if you read the chapter when I talk about rest and breathing oxygen, where I bring in this concept of biorhythm. If you don't remember that, go back and listen to that episode, because it'll give you some great context. I acknowledge and appreciate my own biorhythm. I know the flow of my rhythm throughout an average day, and I'm very thoughtful about how I plan my days and my work in order to fit with what I understand about my own unique biorhythm. But a purposeful thing that I do in my time off or my study leave or time away is I also try to find time and ways to break some of my own tendencies. I've found to be more helpful for me to discover some new creativity, and when I do so I try to break up a little bit, and I'll give you some examples here in a second, but I try to break up some of my own tendencies. And what it does is it helps me become a little bit more aware of the habits and routines and structures that I actively, choose during my normal routines. And when I come back from my time off, it means that I'm more intentional about those routines or habits or structures that I want to keep. But it also allows me to kind of play with it and experience something new. And then in doing so, kind of return to see whether those structures or habits help, or whether there's some that maybe I could let kind of float away. So, for example, with intentional time off, some of the ways I break tendencies are I shift my phone, email, and social media patterns. Again, this may seem like I think this is a helpful thing to do, and to be aware of how those things are playing a role in our everyday life. But on my time away, I try to shift my phone, my email, and my social media patterns. I break free from the need to check my phone or my email, or if you are in a rhythm of checking your social media too often. I try to be really thoughtful about that at all times. But because I recognize times when that you flow into that, giving too much attention to that doesn't bring out the best in people, and certainly in myself. And so I break free from that tendency to check, and I set a different rhythm for when or if I'm not going to check those things, or when I'm going to check them maybe once a day during my time off if there's something I need to make sure that I'm just attending to a message. I also break a tendency when on my time off, as I tend to allow myself to stay up a little later into the evening. And again, I know my own biorhythm, and I know that I'm an early person, or early riser by nature, but I allow myself to kind of stay up later, allow my body to not feel obligated or motivated by what is to come tomorrow, or what I need to be prepared for tomorrow, because that's oftentimes a lot of the world that I live in, when I have commitments and things that I need to be at my best, where I need to be ready in the morning to go. When I am in my time off, I allow some time and space to not feel that obligation, but settle into an evening, which again, sometimes is even counter to my biorhythm. But again, this is for revitalization reasons. This isn't a long-term optimizing strategy. That's my true rhythm that I will find and get back into. But allowing myself just some newness of experiencing, and allowing myself to not be out of obligation out of my own routines. I say yes to social gatherings I might regularly say no to during a typical work week, just because of commitments and energy level and all that. I say yes to things and allow myself to kind of break the tendency and be a part of those things that maybe I would not always have time and space to do. I listen to my body and I rest when I feel it without feeling guilty. Again, during a normal work week and commitments, again, I do a good job of resting and understanding my energy levels, my biorhythm, so that I can be at my best when my best is needed. But when I'm in a study leave or a time off or a sabbatical, when my body feels like it needs to rest, I rest. And I challenge myself to not feel guilty about it. And saying yes where typical no's appear can bring a feeling of liberation and also ownership over your own life and your work. And again, it doesn't have to be forever, but in that time during your time off is powerful to me. And again, the purpose of shifting tendencies is not just to change, but to help myself experience newness and evaluate the value of my routines, my habits, my structures, to see ones that truly help optimize my efforts, and then to identify the ones that might be, there might be ways and things that might be more helpful, or things that I can maybe let go of. But every time I break those kind of tendencies, it allows myself liberation and a way to see those routines and habits and structures from a different angle. And it helps me then ultimately, when I come back to my work or come back to those routines, of settle into the ones that really bring out the best in me. So some questions for you to ponder for today. What habits or tendencies could you take a break from to see with new eyes, to experience newness, and reflect on the role they play in your life and work? What can you say yes to during your time off that you usually wouldn't? The effectiveness of your future actions will thank you because of this time to slow down in order to speed up. Again, I've experienced that firsthand, and you'll be better prepared to be at your best when your best is needed. So I hope you enjoyed today's podcast and got you thinking in new ways. If a deeper dive into any of these topics is interesting to you, please reach out to us, info@jasonvbarger.com, or if you have another topic you want us to explore, we'll continue to design content to help meet you where you are. Lastly, I'll just encourage you to go back and listen to some of those past episodes and connect the dots for some of these themes that I know will add value to your life and your work. Cheers to everyone out there and the path ahead. And just remember that the future of leadership is you, is me, is us. We need to get clear on the temperature we hope to set and be courageous and committed to breathing oxygen into the mindsets and actions that will sustain our path forward. Step back, remember, be a thermostat, and breathe good oxygen. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.